Ever get that feeling like watching some leaders where it's like they just have this magic touch, their teams are firing on all cylinders, projects are just hitting it out of the park, but then others with basically the same resources are barely getting by.
Yeah.
What is it, that intangible something that separates those who just manage from those who really lead and inspire? And let me ask you this, when you're facing a challenge, are you reacting in the moment or are you already like 10 steps ahead, thinking strategically?
Hmm.
Because figuring that out could seriously change your whole perspective. Oh, and before we dive in, huge thanks to London Heartbeats Z Academy UK. They're the educational masterminds behind deep dives like this one.
Absolutely.
They've got this amazing library of over 150 courses, so if this conversation gets your wheels turning, go check them out.
Definitely do.
And hit that subscribe button on their Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You won't want to miss their free updates or any of these awesome discussions. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we get to the heart of what makes organizations tick, what makes teams really click today. Principles of management.
Yeah, you can think of this as like getting a backstage pass to how the best teams, the best companies actually work. We've gone through tons of material, pulling out those core principles, giving you a shortcut to understanding what drives efficiency, what makes things really effective.
We're going to break down what management even means, the skills those managers need, the roles they play, and the actual stuff they do, the functions they perform.
Right.
Our goal is to make all these different ideas and turn them into something clear, something you can use, whether you're already leading a team, you want to be a leader, or you just want to know how organizations work.
And the great thing about these principles, they apply everywhere. You'll start to see how they play out in all kinds of settings, not just business. We're all about those insights you can use right away, maybe even some surprising perspectives that you've never thought about.
I love those.
So let's jump in. What does it actually mean to manage?
Let's get to the core of it.
Yeah.
Our sources have all these different definitions, and when you put them together, you get a really well-rounded picture.
Okay.
One definition talks about like setting up and keeping this environment where people can work together really well to achieve goals.
Yeah.
Like setting the stage for success.
Yeah, like a conductor.
Leading the orchestra.
What's really interesting there is that it's designing and maintaining the environment.
Right.
It's an active thing, you know?
Management isn't passive. You have to put in the effort to make a space where people can collaborate, be efficient. Another definition that builds on this is all about coordinating those work activities, making sure things are done efficiently. That's doing them right. And effectively, that's doing the right things. And all of that is through and with other people.
That with and through other people, that's huge, isn't it?
So crucial.
Management is a social thing. It's not just individual to-dos, it's about working together.
Right. And then we see this definition of management that's all about its purpose, hitting those organizational goals and doing it efficiently and effectively through, those things we always hear about. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling.
Right.
This definition is all about those practical tools of management.
And there's another one that's really concise, but it gets to the point.
Okay.
It says management is guiding the efforts and activities of others all towards common objectives. Or, even simpler, it's the art of getting things done through people.
Yeah, love that.
All of these definitions are coming at it from different angles, but they all land on that same basic idea, guiding and coordinating everyone's efforts to hit shared goals.
Totally. And when we look at those common threads, we see those core functions popping up again and again: planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. These aren't just fancy words. These are the actual things that managers do.
Absolutely.
And remember, management isn't just for the folks at the top of some big company. These principles work in any organized group, a small group of volunteers, a giant corporation, at every level.
Yeah, that's key. No matter if you're leading a small team, running a project, managing a whole department, these principles apply.
Right. And what's the end goal of all this managing? What are we trying to achieve?
Well, our sources say it's about creating a surplus, a profit if it's a business, or reaching those mission goals if it's a nonprofit.
Makes sense.
It's about making sure the organization can keep going, can thrive.
Okay, so we've got a handle on what management is. Let's dig a little deeper. What's at its core? What defines management?
Our sources highlight a few key things.
Okay.
First, management is all about achieving economic results.
Yeah. Got to keep the lights on.
You got it.
Well.
Second, Management takes skill. It takes experience, especially when it comes to working with people.
That's right.
It's not just about knowing your stuff in one specific area.
It's the people skills.
Right. You've got to be able to influence, motivate, guide individuals and teams, understanding how groups work, using everyone's talents to succeed together, all that good stuff.
It feels like that human element, that's where things get really tricky, but also where the biggest wins are.
For sure. And that brings us to the third point. Management, it's dynamic.
Always changing.
Exactly. It's not some rigid set of rules. It has to adapt to new situations, new technologies, new expectations.
Right.
It even takes inspiration from all these different fields, psychology, sociology, economics, you name it.
Wow, so it's less like following a manual, more like navigating like this ever-changing maze.
Yeah, exactly.
And last but not least, management means making decisions. Effective ones.
Right. Managers at every level are always making choices. Their ability to analyze a situation, weigh those options, and make a good call, that's crucial for hitting goals. Bad decisions can have big consequences, so this part is really important.
So to recap, we've got results, we've got working with people, being flexible, and making smart decisions.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot more than just telling people what to do.
Right.
Now let's talk about why management matters so much. What's the point?
Yeah.
What does it actually do?
Great question. Our sources point to a few key reasons. One big one is reducing ambiguity, making things clear.
Yeah.
Effective management, it gives you structure, processes, guidelines, so everyone knows how to approach their work, what's expected of them. That clarity cuts down on confusion and wasted effort.
Super important. I mean, think about a time when you were on a team
Yeah.
and nobody knew what they were supposed to be doing, who was in charge of what.
Chaos.
It was a mess.
Totally inefficient.
Yeah, and frustrating.
Absolutely.
Another purpose is keeping costs down, being mindful of the budget, making sure everyone is thinking about cost.
Yes. Good management means being smart with resources. Money, people, materials.
Right.
It means building a culture where everyone values efficiency and spending wisely. It's not about being cheap, it's about making the most of what you have and keeping the organization healthy in the long run.
And in the world today, everything's moving so fast, so
Yeah.
many unexpected things happening.
Always changing.
I'm guessing managing risk, taking calculated risks, that's got to be a big part of it, right?
Absolutely. Organizations are always dealing with uncertainty.
Yeah.
Good management means spotting those potential risks,
Oh.
figuring out how likely they are to happen and what the impact would be. Then you make smart decisions about which risks to take, and you come up with plans to deal with any negative fallout.
It's like being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly.
Always one step ahead. And last but not least, our sources say management is all about using good judgment, making wise choices.
Yes. We touched on decision-making earlier, but this is even bigger. It's about wisdom, experience, sound reasoning.
Yeah.
You need those things to navigate those complex situations where things aren't always clear-cut. It's not just about following rules, it's about using insight, thinking critically.
So we've talked about what management is, why it's so important. Now let's talk about the people doing the managing. What makes a good manager? What skills do they really need?
Let's dive into the manager's toolkit.
Yes.
Our sources break it down into 3 main areas. First up, human skills.
Oh.
This is all about interacting effectively with people, one-on-one, and in groups.
Those people skills.
Right. You could call it people intelligence. It's understanding others, motivating them, communicating well, building relationships.
Being a people person.
Exactly.
That's so key for a manager, right?
Absolutely. Without those strong human skills, a manager is going to have a tough time building strong teams, getting the best out of their people. Next, we've got technical skills.
Technical skills. That sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's about knowledge and being really good at something specific.
The know-how.
Exactly. Knowing the ins and outs of a certain field, industry, or a set of tasks, it's important for a manager to understand the work that's being done, even if they're not doing it themselves.
Makes sense.
This is especially important at those lower levels of management,
Okay.
where managers are more hands-on with the technical work. But honestly, understanding those core tasks, that's helpful for any manager, no matter their level.
It helps them relate to the team.
Yeah, it helps them understand the challenges, make better decisions.
And then we have conceptual skills.
Right. This one is a little more abstract, but so important,
Okay.
especially for those higher level managers.
Right.
It's the ability to think big picture,
Yeah.
see how all the pieces of the organization fit together, come up with strategies, set those big goals. It's all about strategic thinking.
So important.
these skills, they become even more crucial as managers climb that ladder because their decisions affect the whole organization, where it's going in the long term. It's about seeing the forest, not just the trees, understanding those complex connections, anticipating what's coming next.
So you really need a good mix of all three, right?
Wow.
Human, technical, conceptual, and the balance shifts depending on your role, your level in the organization.
You got it.
So we know what skills managers need, but what does that actually look like in practice? What do they do all day?
Well, that's where Mintzberg's breakdown comes in.
Yes.
It's this famous way of classifying all the different roles managers play. Our sources talk about this in detail.
I'm excited to hear it.
Mintzberg, he identified 10 distinct roles that managers typically juggle.
Dan.
He grouped them into 3 main categories. Interpersonal roles, those are all about relationships. Informational roles, those are about communication. And decisional roles, those are about making choices. Let's start with interpersonal, how managers interact with others.
Okay.
The first interpersonal role is the figurehead.
Figurehead. What does that even mean? What does a manager do as a figurehead?
It's like being the symbolic leader.
Okay.
You're representing the organization at official events, ceremonies.
Right.
Maybe attending a fancy gala, signing important documents, being a host when visitors come in.
The face of the organization.
Exactly. You're embodying the organization's image, its values, in that formal setting.
Next up, the leader role.
Right.
This one seems pretty obvious.
It does.
But what are those key things that a leader does?
So even though it might seem obvious, the leader role, it actually covers a whole bunch of things.
Okay.
It's about guiding and motivating everyone on the team. It's hiring and training, providing direction, setting expectations, creating a positive team environment.
Yeah.
It's about inspiring people and giving them the tools to achieve those organizational goals.
And the third interpersonal role is the liaison.
The liaison.
What's a manager doing when they're wearing that hat?
A liaison, they're all about connections. Building and maintaining those networks of contacts inside and outside the organization.
Right.
Think colleagues in other departments, suppliers, customers, industry folks, community leaders.
Lots of networking.
Exactly. It's about building relationships, nurturing them.
Yeah.
Because those relationships help gather information, build support for the organization's goals.
That makes sense.
Right.
Okay. On to the informational roles.
Right. The informational roles.
These are all about how managers handle information.
Yes. Gathering it, processing it, sharing it.
Okay.
First one is the monitor.
The monitor. What are they monitoring?
Well, as a monitor, the manager is constantly searching for and gathering information that's relevant to the organization.
Okay.
They might be reading industry reports, going to meetings, analyzing market trends, even just paying close attention to what's happening within their own team and in the broader organization.
Right.
It's about being that central hub for all the important knowledge.
They're in the know. You got it. So once the manager, acting as a monitor,
Right.
has all this information,
Yeah,
they switch gears to be the disseminator.
exactly.
What does a manager do when they're disseminating?
A disseminator takes that important information and shares it with the right people and teams within the organization. This makes sure everyone has what they need to do their jobs well and that everyone is on the same page about what's going on.
Keeps everyone in the loop.
You got it.
And the final informational role is the spokesperson.
The spokesperson.
What does that entail?
The spokesperson, they're communicating information about the organization to the outside world.
Okay.
This could be giving presentations to the media, to shareholders, to the public. It's about representing the organization's views, its interests.
They're the voice of the organization.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to the last category. Decisional roles. All about making those choices and taking action.
Yes, decision time. First up,
The entrepreneur.
the entrepreneur. Okay. In this role, the manager is starting and overseeing new projects, improvements, innovations within the organization.
Okay.
This could be developing a brand new product or service, coming up with more efficient processes, or finding and going after new opportunities.
So they're all about growth and positive change.
Exactly.
Next is the disturbance handler.
The disturbance handler.
That sounds like they're dealing with problems, putting out fires.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
When the organization hits a snag, an unexpected problem, a conflict, a crisis, the disturbance handler steps in.
They're the fixer.
Exactly. Their job is to resolve those issues quickly and effectively, minimize the disruption, and get everything back on track.
They're like the superheroes of the organization,
You could say that.
saving the day. Okay, the third decisional role is the resource allocator.
The resource allocator.
What does that involve?
They're making decisions about how to use the organization's resources,
Hmm.
people, money, equipment, information. It's all about figuring out where everything goes, setting budgets, assigning people to projects, prioritizing those competing demands.
So they decide who gets what and for what purpose.
Exactly.
And finally, we have the negotiator.
Ah, yes, the negotiator.
What's their role?
The negotiator is all about discussions and bargaining, both inside and outside the organization.
Yeah.
They're trying to reach agreements that benefit everyone involved.
Right.
This could be negotiating salaries with employees, contracts with suppliers, deals with other organizations.
So they're the deal makers, the
You
mediators.
got it.
Yeah.
Now, those 10 roles, they often overlap, they intertwine in real life.
Right.
But they give us a really useful way to see just how multifaceted a manager's job really is.
Yeah, that breakdown was really helpful. It shows just how much responsibility managers have.
They wear a lot of hats.
So many hats. Okay, let's zoom back in on those core functions of management we talked about earlier. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling.
Yes, let's break them down.
Our sources go into more detail about each of these.
Right.
So first up, planning.
Planning. This is, at its heart, about setting goals.
Okay.
What does the organization want to achieve? Then figuring out the strategies to reach those goals. And then making all these plans to integrate and coordinate all the different activities.
Right.
It's like charting the course for the organization's future.
So it's like before you build a house, you make a blueprint.
Exactly. You need a clear picture of what you want and how you're going to get there.
Yeah. Okay, what about organizing?
Organizing, this is about building the structure, the framework to make those plans happen.
Okay.
It's figuring out what tasks need to be done, who's going to do each task, how those tasks are grouped into departments or teams, who reports to whom, where those decisions are made.
Right.
It's about designing the organizational architecture.
So you're arranging the people.
It's the process of finding, deploying, and keeping those human resources you need to fill all the roles in the organizational structure.
Right.
Think recruitment, selection, training, performance reviews, compensation, employee development. It's all about getting the right people in the right spots and keeping them there.
Because the best plan in the world, the most efficient structure, it's useless without the right people to make it work.
Totally agree. You need a skilled, motivated team.
Right. After staffing comes leading. What does that really mean in terms of management?
Leading, it's about directing, influencing, motivating people to work towards those goals.
Okay.
It's communicating the vision, getting people excited, building morale, resolving conflicts, creating a positive and productive environment.
Yeah.
It's that human element in action guiding the team, giving them the energy to move forward.
It's not just about getting people to do the tasks. It's about getting them invested in the success of the organization.
Exactly.
Working together towards a common goal.
Yeah.
And the last core function, controlling.
Controlling. This is about keeping an eye on how the organization is doing,
Okay.
comparing its performance against those goals and standards we set, and then taking action if things need to be adjusted.
Right.
This could be setting metrics, tracking progress, noticing any deviations, implementing changes, all to make sure the organization is on track. It's like a feedback loop.
So it's this ongoing cycle. Set the goal, take action, check progress, make adjustments, rinse and repeat. These 5 functions, planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling, they really are the foundation of management.
They're the building blocks, and it's important to remember these functions aren't happening in isolation.
Right.
They're all interconnected. They often happen at the same time in the real world of managing. Managers are constantly juggling these different responsibilities, adapting their approach as needed.
So now let's talk about the different levels of management within an organization.
Right, the level.
Our sources outline that typical hierarchical structure.
Yes, in most organizations, except for the really small ones, you'll typically find 3 main levels of management.
Okay.
Top-level management, middle-level management, and lower-level management.
At the top, we have top-level management.
Right.
Who are these people and what are they responsible for?
Top level, think CEO, president, vice presidents, board members.
Right.
They set the overall strategic direction for the whole organization.
Okay.
They define the mission, the values, and they make those big decisions that affect the company's long-term success.
So they're looking at the big picture.
Yeah, the long-term vision, where the organization fits in the world.
Below them, we have middle-level management.
Middle level, right? Who are they? Think department heads, plant managers, regional sales managers, project managers.
Okay.
They're putting those strategies and policies from top management into action,
Right.
and they oversee the lower level managers. They're that crucial link between the big picture strategy and the day-to-day operations.
So they take those broad goals and turn them into specific objectives and plans for their department or unit.
Exactly.
And then we've got lower level management.
Lower level, yep. Who are these managers?
They're often called supervisors, team leaders, foremen.
Right.
They're the ones directly overseeing the daily work, the work of those non-managerial employees.
Oh, okay.
Their focus is on those short-term objectives, making sure tasks are done efficiently and well, and providing guidance and support to their team members.
So they're on the front lines working directly with the people who are doing the core work of the organization.
Exactly.
It's interesting how the amount of authority and responsibility shifts as you move through those levels.
Right.
Top management has the broadest authority. They're accountable for the whole organization.
Yeah, as you go down the hierarchy, that focus narrows, becoming more about specific teams, specific tasks, those short-term outcomes.
Now, to put all of this into perspective, our sources talk about how management thinking has evolved.
Yes, the history. It wasn't always the way we see it now.
Not at all. Management, as a field of study, as a practice, it's gone through some major transformations over time.
Okay.
We can break this evolution down into different schools of thought.
Okay.
It all started with what we call the pre-scientific management period, those early examples of how people organized, going way back to ancient civilizations.
Wow, so even back then they had management, even if they didn't call it that.
Right. Think about building the pyramids in Egypt or those Roman roads.
Huge undertaking.
Massive. Clearly, there were principles of organization, direction at play,
Yeah.
even if they weren't written down as management theory.
Then came the classical school.
Yes, the classical school. This was the early 20th century,
Okay.
and it brought a much more systematic, formal approach to management.
Okay.
There are two main branches here.
Okay.
Scientific management,
Okay.
which was all about efficiency at the individual worker level.
Okay.
Think time and motion studies, optimizing those workflows, and administrative management. Okay.
Which focused on those broader principles of management.
Right.
Things like division of labor, authority, discipline.
So breaking things down, making them more structured.
Exactly.
And then after the classical school, the neoclassical school,
Right.
what was different about that?
The neoclassical school came about because people felt like those classical approaches missed something.
What was that?
The human element.
The human element.
They weren't paying enough attention to human behavior, social factors at work.
Right.
This is where the human relations movement comes in.
Okay.
They emphasize things like motivation, group dynamics, social interactions, and how they all affect productivity.
Okay.
Remember those famous Hawthorne studies?
I've heard of them.
They showed how much social factors can impact how much workers produce.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a big shift towards recognizing that people, they're not just cogs in a machine.
Right.
They're human beings with feelings, relationships, and all that affects how they work.
What came after that? So, World War II happens, and there's this big push towards using numbers, quantitative methods to solve problems.
Okay.
That leads to the management science school.
Okay, and what do they do?
They started applying math, statistics, operations research, all that to help managers make decisions and solve problems.
Okay, so it brought this more data-driven, analytical approach to management.
Exactly.
And finally, the modern or contemporary school, the most recent perspective.
Yes, the modern school.
What are the hallmarks of this one?
This one brings together lots of newer, more integrated perspectives.
Okay.
A couple of the big ones are the systems approach,
Okay.
which says that organizations aren't isolated. They're complex systems with interconnected parts, and they're always interacting with their environment.
Right.
And then we have the contingency approach,
Okay.
which argues that there's no one right way to manage. The best approach depends on the situation, the challenges the organization is facing.
It's all about adapting.
Exactly. And in this modern era, we also see a big emphasis on quality management, globalization, and a focus on innovation and sustainability.
Right.
This whole journey through history, it shows us how much our understanding of management has changed, how it's constantly evolving.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's still changing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go back to that idea we started with. Checkers versus chess.
Right.
How does everything we talked about today relate to that analogy?
Think of it like this. In checkers, the pieces are all the same.
Yeah.
Their moves are pretty limited, pretty predictable.
Right.
Now, a manager who's like a checkers player, they might not really understand their team members that well, and they probably have a one-size-fits-all approach to leadership.
Okay,
They're just reacting to what's right in front of them, no real strategy, no thinking ahead.
gotcha.
But chess, each piece is different. It's got its own strengths, its own range of moves.
Yeah.
A good chess player, they're thinking several moves ahead.
Right.
They're anticipating their opponent, planning their strategy.
Always thinking ahead.
Exactly.
So a great manager, they're like a chess player. They understand their team, each individual's strengths and weaknesses, and they use those strategically.
Right.
They anticipate those challenges, those opportunities, and they adapt based on the specific situation, just like those core management functions.
Exactly. Planning, organizing, leading, and controlling in a dynamic and thoughtful way.
So, to recap, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about what management actually means, all those different definitions.
Right.
We looked at its core characteristics, why it's so important.
Yep.
We explored the skills managers need, the many roles they play, those 5 key functions: planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling.
Right.
We even looked at the different levels of management and how management thinking has changed over time. Understanding these principles, it really gives anyone involved in leading or working within an organization a solid foundation.
Absolutely.
And for you, listening right now, this knowledge can be incredibly valuable. Whether you're leading a team, a part of a team, or even just trying to organize your own projects better,
Right.
these principles, they can help you make better decisions, be more strategic, and ultimately achieve more.
For sure.